super aircraft carriers are one of those few things that you can't even imagine how complex they are. Planes land and take off from them that under normal conditions need more than a kilometer of runway, but in this case, the runway is only 100 meters. Add to this the dozens of people working on the platform simultaneously as planes land and take off, all while maintaining order. I still can't believe it, but NATO has invited me to visit a United States supercarrier while it was conducting exercises together with other countries of the alliance in the Adriatic Sea. And yes, here I am on the deck of a United States nuclear aircraft carrier, the U.S. George Bush. These planes are one of the most incredible infrastructures on the planet and are absolutely necessary to maintain an international presence. In this video, you'll understand why aircraft carriers are so incredible and why you'll undoubtedly become fascinated by them after watching. Currently, only 5 nations operate aircraft carriers that can deploy planes using conventional takeoffs. These are the United States, China, France, India, and Russia, although Russia only has 1 aircraft carrier and it is damaged from an accident they had a few years ago. Besides, there are other countries that also have aircraft carriers, but exclusively for aircraft capable of vertical takeoff and landing, such as Brazil, Egypt, Italy, United Kingdom, Japan, Spain, and Thailand. Developing an aircraft carrier for conventional aircraft to land and take off is much more complex than one solely for vertical takeoff aircraft, as one might expect. Airplanes without vertical takeoff and landing capabilities need runways to accelerate for takeoff and decelerate for landing. In this video, we'll focus on the most sophisticated aircraft carriers from the United States, as there's a lot of public information available. I was invited to visit and asked many questions while there. But in reality, they are the basis of all other aircraft carriers, so by understanding more or less how this one operates, we can understand how the others operate. The US operates 11 super aircraft carriers, 10 Nimitz-class, and 1 Gerald Ford-class. This latest model is physically very similar to the previous Nimitz-class ones. Each one of them weighs approximately 100,000 tons, or the equivalent of 100 million kilograms. They have a length of about 333 meters and about 77 meters wide at their broadest point. The height is about 75 meters. This is probably more than most of the buildings in your city. Nimitz-class aircraft carriers are estimated to have cost about $8 billion to build and cost about $8 million a day to operate. But actually, the value of aircraft carriers is infinitely higher, as you have to add the price of all the aircraft and weaponry that is being transported at that time. They can carry between 80 and 90 aircraft, and knowing that the US Navy primarily operates the F-18 Super Hornet with a unit price of $67 million, assuming that this aircraft carrier will carry 80 Super Hornets, the price of just the 80 aircraft would be $5 billion. To which you would have to add the price of other aircraft that it also carries, such as the Northrop Grumman E-2 or some helicopters. As you know, these aircraft carriers can deploy the F-35 in their 100 model. And if we put it into the equation, the price would rise much more. To this, we must add the cost of weaponry, missiles, ammunition, fuel tanks, and other equipment. As you can see, the aircraft carrier really costs much more than those initial $8 billion. Interestingly, there are more F-18s on this type of supercarrier than in the entire Spanish Air Force. With this information, you can get an idea of their potential, but being so valuable makes them an attractive target for the enemy. That's why they have brutal defensive measures. We'll see them later. Aircraft carriers began to be used in the 20s, but the fact is that these gained real importance in World War II when air warfare became very strong. This type of infrastructure allows a country to stand up to another regardless of how far the conflict is from home. Basically, they are portable military air bases. The fact that they are mobile gives them certain unique advantages. First, you can establish a military air base near an enemy country's coast. As we talked about in the video on aviation laws, a country has decision-making power over its waters up to 12 nautical miles from the coast. Therefore, an aircraft carrier can be 12 miles, or the equivalent of 22 kilometers from the enemy's coast without violating any law. And, as you can imagine, this is a tremendous deterrent weapon. Note that an aircraft carrier like this can have more F-18s than Spain's entire air force. In reality, aircraft carriers are never positioned so close to enemy coasts due to safety concerns. But there's no need unless it's purely for deterrence. As mobile air bases, they can evade storms and find areas with favorable weather to operate, especially during hurricanes or conditions that hinder operations. However, they can generally operate in rain or low visibility conditions without issues. It's designed for that. At first glance, it may seem like they are an easy target simply because of their size. To put it in context, about 3 Santiago Bernabeu football fields can fit on its deck. Obviously, the manufacturers and designers of aircraft carriers know that size is one of their weak points, and they have many measures to counteract this weakness. During World War II, one of the main dangers to aircraft carriers were submarines, because they approached from below without the aircraft carrier noticing and launched torpedoes that ended up sinking it. But nowadays, this is not the biggest threat, as a submarine would be detected well in advance if it approached from below. But also, aircraft carriers never go alone. They always go in what is known as a carrier battle group, generally made up of the aircraft carrier itself, the fighter planes that go on the aircraft carrier, but if they were in flight, they could defend the aircraft carrier itself. This is what is known as air wing, where within all these aircraft they are divided by squadrons. And as the captain was telling me, each squadron has a function, so some fighters will aim to protect the ship. Each of us has a different task on the ship. The F-18S can do defense missions, they can do offensive missions, they can do air-to-air, planes against planes, or they can also do ground attacks. Additionally, we have the entire fleet of ships accompanying the aircraft carrier. They are generally composed of 2 cruisers, which mainly take care of air defenses, then 1 or 2 destroyers, which handle sub-defenses, but that can also take care of air defenses, and 1 or even 2 submarines, which move in parallel to the entire fleet but underwater. And finally, the battle group can also include ships responsible for logistical tasks, such as carrying weaponry, food, and other necessary material to the other members of the battle group. Although photos and videos show these ships very close to each other, in reality, they maintain a safe distance. It's just for that, to take a nice picture. So, knowing all the members of the battle group, in reality, an aircraft carrier wouldn't have to focus on defending itself, but the other members of the battle group should defend it, yet it still also has its own defenses, just in case they were necessary. The first one is its autonomy. As discussed in the next section on propulsion, these aircraft carriers have nearly unlimited autonomy. Therefore, they are always in motion. They can sustain a steady speed of around 34.18 miles /h. This speed allows them to have a very wide range of movement. For example, if it were detected that a missile has been launched targeting the aircraft carrier, assuming the missile would take about 7 minutes to arrive, the ship could already be within a radio circle of 6.4 kilometers, making it virtually impossible to hit it by coordinates. A missile would have to be launched that detected the ship and change direction to hit it. So, if a missile of these characteristics were launched targeting the aircraft carrier, and if for any reason the ships of the battle group couldn't protect it, the first line of defense would be the anti-aircraft missile batteries. An aircraft carrier can typically have 2 or 3 of these batteries. If these fail to hit the target, the guns that fire between 50 and 75 shots per second would be used. Yes, they would literally keep shooting at the enemy missile until they brought it down. And if this wasn't enough, the aircraft carriers still have another ace up their sleeve. They use countermeasures like chaff to confuse the missile's radar or flares to confuse an infrared guided missile. This concept also applies to torpedoes. Decoys would be deployed that would generate noise for the torpedo, and it would be confused and think that the ship has changed position or that there are even several ships and it wouldn't know which one to hit. To all these physical measures, you can also add the ship's electronic warfare measures, through which it can generate and transmit false information to enemy radars to confuse them using electromagnetic waves. Despite its size making it seem like an easy target, its protections make it quite difficult to hit. Undoubtedly, one of the most remarkable features of these aircraft carriers is their power plant. In the past, it was a diesel engine that turned the propellers. Nowadays, nuclear energy is used. This allows the aircraft carrier to have a very high autonomy between 20 and 25 years. But be careful, because even though the ship doesn't need to refuel, the planes inside do need to, and therefore it is necessary to transfer fuel every so often. The nuclear reactor is sealed and monitored 24/7. Like all current nuclear reactors, it is a controlled reaction that produces significant heat. In order to extract energy from the process, a closed water circuit is used, which is heated by the heat released in the reaction and made to flow until it reaches an area where it passes through a water tank where heat exchange takes place between the high temperature incoming water and the tank water. In this way, the temperature of the water in the closed circuit is lowered so that it can return to the reactor, while the tank water turns into steam because it heats up, and this steam is used to drive a turbine that generates electricity for the entire ship. Apart from this, of course, it also turns the propellers to give speed to the ship itself. It's crucial to emphasize that the water from the nuclear reaction never comes into contact with the tank water that turns into steam. This is a simple fact about nuclear reactors that some may not be aware of. Well, the aircraft carrier has 4 bronze propellers with a diameter of 7.6 meters and a mass of 30 tons each, equivalent to about 20 Volkswagen Golf cars. Thanks to these propellers, it can sustain a speed of about 55 kilometers per hour consistently, but it could probably go faster, although its maximum speed is classified. Additionally, a bow bulb is used, which molds the water in front of the ship so it moves away from its path more smoothly, thus reducing drag. For longtime followers of this channel, this is essentially like aerodynamics. It's the same concept as if we were to put a kind of nose on a train instead of it just being flat. Putting that kind of nose on will significantly reduce drag. Well, ships use a bow bulb. It's important not to forget that we're talking about an aircraft carrier whose objective is, of course, the operation of aircraft. Therefore, all the work of all the people converges on that the planes can operate correctly. In fact, Nimitz-class aircraft carriers can deploy an aircraft about every 30 seconds on average. And for that, these ships carry around about 6,000 people on board, of which about 2,500 are explicit aircraft staff. Pilots, mechanics, and other types of jobs directly related to that, but then there can be up to about 3,500 people in charge of the ship's duties. But as I was telling you, these 3,500 people, even though they are not directly involved with the aircrafts, are strictly necessary so that the other 2,500 people can indeed devote themselves to it. Super aircraft carriers have a gym, food store, dining rooms, barbershop, chapel, and other necessary facilities installed in the hangar for daily life. Think that we are really talking about a portable mini-city. Everything you use in your city that is strictly necessary will also be on board. People who live on aircraft carriers spend so much time there that it is necessary to organize leisure activities to ensure they have a good time. To always keep morale high. These are things that perhaps we don't initially think about or even imagine, but are fundamental so that people living there see sense in what they are doing. As you may have noticed, I haven't mentioned aircraft carrier operations, catapults, or cables yet. This video was primarily an introduction to what's coming. In the coming months, 4 more videos will be released. The first one will show how to board and disembark an aircraft carrier. I did it myself by landing with the cable and leaving with the catapult. We will talk about that in the next video. It's absolute madness. By the way, let me know in the comments below how many G-forces you think are withstood both in the cable landing and in the catapult takeoff, because yes, as you already know, I love everything about G-forces and I measured it. We will also have a video on how fighter pilots operate on aircraft carriers, as landing and taking off from them is undoubtedly one of the most complex tasks a fighter pilot can perform. After that video, we'll talk about operations on the deck, on the surface of the aircraft carrier, landings, takeoffs, how absolutely everything is organized so that the environment is safe despite planes landing and taking off and people working around. And to finish, we will do a quite different analysis than what we are used to when we hear about aircraft carriers, and that is that we are going to get deep into what the lifestyle of the people who spend months aboard these super aircraft carriers is like. And when I was living all those landings and all those takeoffs, I asked them to take a picture of me, and this is that picture, and as it couldn't be otherwise, we are going to put this picture probably here. It deserves to be in this recording set, and I will decide where to place it. Thank you for watching, and thank you to NATO for inviting me to this absolute madness. Stay tuned for the upcoming aircraft carrier videos, which will be the best on YouTube. See you in the next video, and thank you for watching. Thank you.